making our way along the raised south-facing bed. I just want to show you this wonderful peony. This is a peony called tenuifolia. Tenuifolia meaning very fine leaves, which I think you'll agree this has. Its natural habitat is in the Caucasus Mountains of Russia and environ. There are various national parks. But I recently saw a photograph of it in a national park in Azerbaijan, which is what I'm showing you now, and I think it's just breathtaking. It's obviously on open ground, good drainage, full sun, and sort of try to replicate it here in the border. But imagine what a wonderful sight it must be in the wild. Under the last few flowers on Camellia Dr. Burns' side, we have this skimia bush. Now, in a couple of videos ago we saw the gorgeously sweetly scented skimia Q green. This, however, is not in the same category. The smell is rather sort of acrid, not that pleasant, quite honestly. I mean, it's quite decorative, it's absolutely covered in flowers. It comes from Afghanistan, that sort of area. And skimias are a member of the rue family, which includes citruses, so they do have aromatic leaves and flowers, but not necessarily delightfully scented. This is Skimia anquitilia. Next door to the skimia is another member of the rue family, which is probably a complete waste of space. This comes from Japan. It's called Oryxa japonica, and it has these tiny greeny yellow flowers in May. It spreads far and wide. It's all the way along there. And what's more, if you rub the leaves, you get an even more acrid sort of smell than you do with the next door skimia. I don't know why I grow this. It's just spread over 30 years. The autumn colour is a very, very pale yellow. I noticed that the rose is in flower up at the Malotus tree. I think we'll go up behind it and have a look at it a bit closer. It's an extremely vigorous rose, as you can see, and it's a hybrid of the wild Rosa gigantea, and I think that name says it all. Gigantea in respect of the fact that it spreads upwards and climbs into trees with its thorns, can get up to 20-30 feet at the very least, if not a lot more than that. This one I have known as Senator La Follette, thinking it was named after the Robert La Follette senator in America in the 1870s, 1900. However, this rose was introduced in 1910 in France. Relations between France and America were a bit frosty in 1910, and in fact this rose was registered as Follette But who Follett was, I do not know. Rosa gigantea itself comes from Myanmar, the north of Myanmar, and the south of China. So it's at low elevations, about 1,000 meters, so it's quite tender. Grown a lot in the Mediterranean because that climate does suit it very well. But I think it's a lovely colour, lovely pink, this particular variety, and they're rather a loose flower, beautifully perfumed. Below the rose, more as a curiosity, is an unusual Chinese fig, deciduous fig, which has the most beautiful, beautiful new growth. So I put my hand in front and you can see some little embryo figs. They won't come to anything, mind you. But it's a gorgeous foliage plant anyway. I don't know what the species is, unfortunately. Collected by a friend of mine in the wild in China. At the bottom of the tennis court, I've spotted another wild peony. This one is from the Mediterranean region, really. This is called Peony Mascula. It could do with quite a bit of heat to perform well. Now, popping out of the leafy soil is a Trillium from the southeastern United States, the Appalachian Mountains to be precise. This is Trillium simile, and it's called the jeweled wake robin. Sounds rather good. I confused it with another Trillium called Trillium erectum with the white flowers, which is unfortunately called Stinking Benjamin. Well, this, thank goodness, is not stinking. It smells of green apples. It always makes me think that a fly has taken a dive bomb through the middle and got stuck. Anyway, here we are, the jeweled wake robin. I just thought I'd talk about this squill, Scilla peruviana bulb. Comes from Portugal, the Western Mediterranean, in spite of its name, and we'll come to that in a minute. But it's always intriguing the way the flowers start on the outside and gradually these dark buds open till you get a full flower truss. And these flowers are like little jewels. This squill owes its wrong name to a 16th century botanist called Lecluse, but he calls himself Clusius in Latin. And he was a specialist in tulips, lived in Leiden, I think, eventually, having moved around the place. But he received a consignment of bulbs of this on a ship called the Peru. And in about 1560 he called this plant the Hyacinth peruanus. Now in 1750s, when the great Linnaeus was working out his great classification, he looked at Clusius's work and he assumed that the peruanus meant it came from Peru. So he called it Scilla peruviana. Anyway, the name has stuck, even though it's nothing to do with Peru. It reminds me of the Narini, whose name is the Guernsey lily, Narini sinensis from Guernsey, whereas in fact it's a South African bulb, but grew in Guernsey when it was named. Full of pitfalls, these bulbs. Just show you one or two of these Michelias, as they used to be called, now all into Magnolia. Here we are, more or less in the tree of this fantastic and highly scented Magnolia. Fairy blush. Here's this lovely Magnolia, and I do wish you could smell it. Its scent is of gardenias. This is Magnolia Maurii, touch of pink. Gorgeous. Our resident sphinx appears to have moved to a different part of the garden and is now maintaining inscrutability. Again. Here's another of these Michelias. Now, after a few name changes, it has become Magnolia Levifolia. Now, this particular variety, and there are several different varieties of this now. This particular variety is called Velvet and Cream. And if I show you up close, you can see the velvet buds. And underneath, there is some buff coloured indumentum. So it's well named. Velvet and Cream. Now in the undergrowth, I'm alarmed to see Cobras coming out of hibernation. Ha ha ha. This is an Aracema, sort of lords and ladies. This is a form with extra good markings from Sikkim. Aracema griffithii. Now, in my opinion, the crowning glory of hybrid rhododendrons, and I look forward to every year, is Rhododendron loderi, cross that was made over 100 years ago, and quite frankly, I think has stood the test of time. It's notoriously difficult to identify which it is. There have been many varieties of this cross, but whatever it is fabulous. Here we're getting up close and personal with its great big scented trumpets pouring out their sweet and spicy, fruity scent.